Hi and welcome to this third video on the functionalities of the PSD Interop plugin. This video is mainly going to focus on the added options of being able to export matching color, displacement, group IDs as well as materials out of Zbrush into Photoshop with more or less one click of the button. And you can see I've made this little coin example here. It's already shaded, it's a Zbrush material, but I also got a matching displacement map, flat diffuse, as well as a mask ID map. So if I don't like a specific coin here, I can just do a color range select on the group ID color and I get a mask for whatever coin I choose to change. In Zbrush I created a bunch of different objects for the coin example, as you can see here. Each of these coins has color applied, so if I just apply a flat diffuse, you can see there's some poly painting on there. Poly painting is ZBrush's way of doing 3D painting, and you store one color per face, and in order to get a bit of resolution out of it, each coin is pretty high res, almost like 100,000 faces, which is probably too high res considering that I'm duplicating them all over the place later. But there's ways around that I can show you as well. Each object also has its own group ID color, and the way you get this is by going to the polygroup subpalette and doing a group visible in this case, and you can see I'm cycling through the different ID colors and each one has its own. They're all aligned on top of each other as well, all objects. Same orientation and everything. And if I want to create my insert brush, I just hit B and hit the create insert multimesh, which will create a brush from all my subtools. And I've already got my brush here, but I do need to make some slight changes to the settings in order to have a bit of a random mode going, so it cycles randomly through all the different variations I have. Under the modifiers in the brush palette, you can see this little preview of the currently active insert brush, and these are all the ones I have. So I've got about 8 variations here, and I can cycle through the multi-mesh selector and it'll change it. For each of these ones I need to set the number of variations that there are. So in this case I would need to enter 8 for each of these. So go to 8, the next one, etc. As well as the way I want it to cycle. If you hover over it, you can see number 1 is cycle forward, number 2 is cycle backward, 3 is random, which is what I want. And also I'm setting the multi-mesh selector for 3. And like I said, I have to do this for each variation, unfortunately, but you only have to do it once. And once you're done, you just save your brush for later use, and then we're ready to spray on some coins. So I'm just going to bring in again my empty plane, and in this case I exported an area out of my document that is the size I want, but it was just a blank canvas. So if I import it, I'm just going to get white in my case. And I also have, under the PSD res slider, I selected 0 because I do not want to waste polygons on a plane that I'm just going to cover up with coins. So I just set it to 0, which will give me an unsubdivided plane that has just enough resolution for my cursor to snap to. So if I turn on the wireframe, you can see it has about 5,000 polygons, which is more than enough. And since my coin brush already has all the color information in it, I need to prepare the plane for painting, because by default the polarized, the unpolarized, and the merged maps are straight textures that are applied. In the texture there's just in this case just an empty white plane, but I need to have the plane accept poly painting as well. So I'm just going to hit prepare for paint, and as usual I can apply my polarized, unpolarized, and merged, which if you have enough resolution on your plane will not downsample your texture. So for example, if you made a 2K selection in your Photoshop document, send it to Zbrush, and you apply it to an 8 million polygon plane, you will not have any downsampling of your texture when you send back the color. But in this case I just want to fill it with black, and so I'm just gonna load my previously saved coin brush. I'm gonna turn off RGB and Z-add, because like I said, the gold coins already have the colors saved on them. So if I were to have RGB on, I would override the color with whatever color is selected here currently. I also have curve mode on right now, and if I start brushing on coins here, I will get one coin on each curve segment, and you can play with, for example, the curve steps just to make the segments longer. In the brush modifier palette you have a stretch, for example, if you have something that is not a coin but for example scales, and you want it to stretch along your brush stroke a bit. And you can also set, for example, the profile curve, intensity, size, fall off, etc., etc. If you want more information on that, I would suggest you watch the Z Classroom videos on the curve modes. But anyway, I'm just gonna quickly hack away here and create a few base coins, and whenever I click on the curve while it's still active, I'm gonna cycle through different random modes more or less. But I can also turn off curve mode and just drag out individual coins. You can see it's still being applied randomly. However, the orientation is all facing the same direction, and that is because by default I'm snapping to the normal of the plane underneath. But you can also, for example, use the picker palette up here, which I docked to the right, and set a custom starting orientation with this arrow here, where you can just sample anywhere in your document. So if I were to set it here, I would just drag it out according to the way I'm looking at the plane. Or if I set my start point at one of the edges of one of the existing coins, it's gonna sample from there. So this can give you some quick different variations if you choose to drag them out one by one. However, Zbrush will also mask out the coin, so currently everything except the active coin is masked. So if I just go to rotate, I can rotate and move my coin around the way I choose and position it in a kind of random mode. And I'm just gonna go ahead and keep filling up my plane here. Fill up my plane pretty well. You can see, and I rotate to the side, I've got quite a pile up, quite a bit of overlap, so it's pretty nice. And if I turn on polyframe mode, you can see all my group IDs are intact. And you can even now use these group IDs to isolate specific coins. So Control Shift and click on a single coin will just show you this one coin. Control click will mask the coin. Control Shift click again shows everything. And then you just Control click outside again to invert the mask. And now this one coin is isolated, and I can use the move feature to move it around, rotate it, so you can change it even after everything has been applied, no problem. So get rid of this mask, and I just want to export this now. I'm just going to apply one of the Zbrush materials just because they look cool. And go to my Documents palette, down to my PSD Interop, and I could click the Export to Photoshop now, but you should go down to your export options and make sure the options are selected that you want. By default, it's going to look like this, so only displacement will be exported. I'm just going to click Color, Material, and Groups, and hit the Export to Photoshop. And this dialog is going to pop up. This has to do with the material that you're exporting, and it refers to the material index, but you shouldn't really have to worry about it because the material down here kind of overrides it. So I'm just going to click yes, but like I said, it honestly doesn't matter. Well done. I could now go to Photoshop and import all this stuff in, but I just want to quickly preview what I just exported. So I could save this plane for later use, but I'm just going to create a new one with the import from Photoshop, and I'm going to set my PSD res slider to 8, so 8 million polygons. I would only kind of require 4 because what I just exported was a 2K map, and a 2K map would need roughly 4.1 million polygons to have the same pixel to polygon ratio. But you know, 8 is pretty comfortable. So create the new plane. Go down to my texture subpalette, prepare for paint, and I'm just going to apply the last color export. Go down to my displacement preview. I'm just going to set the displacement multiplier here a bit higher just so you can see a bit better. And apply disp and choose my last disp export. Again, as usual, name your layer disp base. And the displacement has been applied. If I just apply one of the nice shaders again, you can see it looks pretty damn good considering that it's pure displacement. Obviously where I had a bit of overlap, and you can see a bit of stretching on the side. But for example, you could just take again your insert coin brush, turn off the curve mode here, and start inserting coins. There's two things now. If I click now, it'll tell me the mesh has layers, and what it doesn't tell me right now, the mesh also has subdivisions. When you use the insert brushes, your mesh cannot have layers or subdivisions. So I could just go down here to layers in the tool palette, turn off this record mode and hit bake all. This will apply everything to the base, and also go to geometry and go under the subdivision slider, delete lower, and now my mesh has no subdivisions and no layers. And if I prepare my coin brush again by turning RGB off, I can just start pulling out new coins again. So this would also get around the issue that we are building up polygons rapidly. So like I said, one coin has like 100,000 faces, but like I said, with 8 million polygons for this kind of resolution, we have more than enough polygons to cover each pixel, and so we can optimize a bit. But there's one thing, I used the prepare for paint and applied this, I chose the last disp export. When you export groups, this is not really advisable, because if I look at my polyframe now, you can see I lost all my group IDs for the coins I originally exported. So if you want to continue applying coins, I would strongly suggest you make the round trip to Photoshop and import all your maps in, and then when you apply this stuff again, you will have the original group IDs as well as the new ones, because like I said, all the old ones now have one group ID applied, so it's very easy in Photoshop afterwards to just get rid of it and just be left with the new coins in this case. Back in Photoshop, let me just quickly go over some of the new actions that have to do with the color, material, and group stuff that I've explained previously. Bring in displacement is the old action that just brings in the displacement. Bring in disp and color, disp, color, and groups, disp, color, material and groups, just material, just color, and whatnot. So basically all the variations you could ever need. Update current displacement, as discussed in I think the second video, will just replace your current layer with whatever displacement has been exported. So in case you imported something into Photoshop, you don't like it, you make changes in ZBrush without creating a new plane, and you just re-export it, that'll just update your displacement. Discard connection breaks the connection between ZBrush and Photoshop. Set up layer structure is just a quick action to create your polarized and unpolarized layer. It's just a simple rename really, in case you don't have it. Create empty connection will just create or store your selection and create all the necessary stuff without actually exporting anything out to ZBrush. So it's just a way of quickly opening a connection if you, for example, have something like the coin example where I didn't really have a document, so I just needed something. It's also worth looking into the actions. The same as with the bring in displacement, there are going to be a few disabled items in each action. On the bring in disp, I mentioned previously that I'm doing a high pass and a feathering of the edges. I'm not doing that on the other actions, so this is why there's a few disabled in here. It just didn't make any sense for color and material. So, but if you need it, it's there, you can just turn it on. So you can see I already brought in my coins that I export out of ZBrush. So I've got my polarized layer, which is the flat diffuse, unpolarized, which would be the shaded out of ZBrush, my displacement map, as well as a group ID map. And for example, if I just want to make this tileable, I'm just doing a quick offset on everything, and you can see obviously there's a bit of a seam here in the middle right now, which I'm going to cover up, and just apply my offset, do my selection again, and send it to ZBrush. In this case, the group ID layer would not go with it, but let me show you how to get around that. So I'm sending that stuff to ZBrush, which I've already done actually. So inside of ZBrush, same procedure as usually. I created my plane, I brought in my color, did a prepare for paint, applied the polarized layer, which is just my flat diffuse, and applied my displacement, and I'm left with this. Then I just filled in the gaps. If you look at my subtools here, you can see I've actually got two objects. And the way, or the reason I did this is just because I mentioned that ZBrush and high polygon counts are not ideal. So I went to the append and appended this empty plane, which you should have when you set up your plane via the plugin. And let me just quickly redo this here. So I have this empty plane. I moved it actually down a bit, and Then just used my coin brush, started pulling out coins. Actually, I should probably prepared that for paint before, which I'm just gonna click the colorize down here under poly paint. Pull out a few coins, and then Control Shift click on the plane, which will hide the coins. Control Shift drag outside will invert the selection, and then I just went down to Geometry, Modify Topology, Delete Hidden, and now I have just the coins, and I don't need the plane anymore, so I can just drag out everything as usual, or use the curve brush or whatever, and fill up the gaps. There's one thing though, before I export this again, I would need to merge it back into the original plane. It's just that the plugin currently only works with the original plane. So go to your first plane, make sure that the layer record modes are off, or even better, just hit the bake all, and then just go to merge down, and then we have a single merged plane, which is pretty high res, but doesn't matter. Except I only did the plane append thing to keep performance high while I work on it. And then just export it. Back in Photoshop, you can see I just made a group here. I ended up with polarized, unpolarized, group ID, and displacement. And then I just did a magic wand selection of the area around the new coins, which conveniently is a single color, and just grouped it. And now I've got everything I need. You see, everything is isolated nicely. All the overlap is still there. So yeah, it's nice coin maps, saving grease one coin at a time. And I'm sure you'll find some other uses for it as well.